right, there are quite a few new Nintendo Switch 2 news and updates I want to discuss with you all today, starting with an update to the ongoing game keycard situation for the Nintendo Switch 2 console, because you're probably well aware that the vast majority of third-party releases on the Nintendo Switch 2 have been a game keycard so far, and we actually now have one publisher speaking out and trying to gain some momentum to try to change that. How successful would they potentially be? I do not know, but I do want to highlight that, unpack all the different angles of the story, and also highlight one game on that note that does seem like it's going to be fully on the cartridge from Sega, which is a good situation because so far that has not been the case from any Sega releases, and maybe, just maybe, this shines some shred of hope that as we get further into the Switch 2's generation, we will have more cartridge size options and or more companies may opt to do the on-game cartridge solution, as that is clearly the preference for physical collectors out there. We then have some big headlines popping up from Digital Foundry's breakdown of the Nintendo Switch 2, and specifically the display around it being a slower LCD technology causing ghosting. That's the big headlines flying around online, and I want to unpack kind of what's going on there and whether or not it should cause any kind of concern for you if you are somebody who is on the fence of picking up this console or not. We also have an update for that Metroid Prime 4 promotional poster that said out now previously. And yes, the running theory that I was also thinking was the case, it just appeared to be a mistake, but we have a correction around it I want to highlight. And finally, believe it or not, the Nintendo Direct anticipation is at such an all-time high that we have articles hitting the internet suggesting there may be a Direct purely off of the pinned tweet status off of Nintendo of America's X account. So we're going to break down that one as well and have a reality check on just how soon a Nintendo Direct might actually be taking place. But we're going to get on the same page with all this info, but before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick off this conversation right over at Go Nintendo, where you can see the following article written up that outlines what's going on with this game keycard situation for Nintendo Switch 2. Physical games publisher pledges to work with Switch 2 devs/pubs for full on-the-game card releases, the key to success. And you have here, while the original Switch had code-in-a-box releases alongside regular game card options, the Switch 2 has introduced the game keycard physical release. This lets devs/publishers have a physical release/presence at retail, but the game itself still has to be downloaded. You insert the game keycard into your Switch 2 and then the download starts up. In other words, it's a physical release that actually contains next to nothing on the game keycard. Ever since the game keycards were announced, the pushback was swift and loud from gamers. People have made it clear that they want to buy physical releases that give them the entire game on a game card, and the intensity of the distaste for game keycards has only grown since Switch 2 launched. That paved the way for one physical game company that's looking to fight the good fight. Lost & Cult is a company that has released a number of physical Switch games, and they apparently want to do the same on Switch 2. Lost & Cult's Ryan Brown has taken to social media to show devs/publishers that Switch 2 owners want traditional game keycard releases, no downloads required, and you have their official statement here: developers/publishers, talk to me, we'll give you a full on-the-cart Switch 2 physical release. It's what people want, it's what you want, and we can make it work for you. Hit me up. Now, the big thing with this game keycard thing, because this is a relatively small publisher in the grand scheme of things, and what kind of deal they could work out to make it make sense for other publishers to potentially get the game on the cartridge entirely, that kind of remains to be seen. I mean, the rumored number right now that's floating out there for a 64 gigabyte cartridge for the Nintendo Switch 2 cart is like 16 or 17 bucks, which if that is the case on a $50 release, it's probably just not going to be in the cards at all. For some of the higher priced $60, $70 games, maybe an $80 game, you better hope that that entire thing would be on the cartridge, but I'm sure we're going to see games in this generation that may be released at $80 third party and actually do have a game key card. That is definitely a possibility. And at the end of the day, this is somewhat on Nintendo for just offering one cartridge size as one solution to all of these publishers and developers, because if there were smaller cartridge sizes out there, we would likely see a lot more third-party releases on the cartridge like we did for Switch 1, some games even being highlighted recently that literally are a game key card in the Switch 2 version, and they are on the cartridge on the Switch 1 version because of the cartridge sizes available. So the reality is that it's still messy either way, but if publishers do really hear the feedback from the gamers and there's enough of a sales swing in the game key cards not necessarily performing up to expectation, and then games that do go on cartridge actually sell and exceed expectations because of the support behind them, there's definitely a world and a possibility where publishers and developers work along with Nintendo, maybe have a 32 gigabyte cartridge hit the market at some point, or even a 16 gigabyte cartridge. And so for those smaller projects like Donkey Kong Bonanza, we found out and talked about in yesterday's video that it's 8.5 gigabytes. Some of these Switch 2 generation games are not going to need anywhere near 64 gigabytes. And if there's a lower cost option, maybe we get further into this generation and do see wider support for full on game cartridge content. That would obviously be a win. And one publisher that we have not seen actually do a full on cartridge release in the Switch 2 generation just yet is Sega. And you can see this post over from Nintendo, which maybe, you know, kind of ties into this conversation of shifting in what we've seen happen, at least so far, where it says Sonic Racing Crossworlds Switch 2 physical release appears to be a Switch 2 edition, which is a red Switch 1 game card with the Switch 2 upgrade on the game card rather than a dreaded game key card. And the actual reason that they're highlighting this here is because you can actually see a transparent banner at the bottom, which, to give you a clear distinction at what that looks like, for the Switch 2 edition of games, you have the transparent banner, and every single game key card has been this basically white text across the board, or white banner across the board. No transparency in any of the releases for game key cards, with that disclaimer at the bottom. So the idea is from this marketing promotional material for Sonic Racing Crossworlds that maybe this is indeed a Switch 2 edition of this game, which would mean it is actually on cartridge, which is obviously a good situation for Sega, who so far has not released anything fully on cartridge for the Nintendo Switch 2. I am hopeful that that is the case, and that maybe we do start to get smaller cartridge sizes available to publishers, because I just don't think there's going to be enough of a movement to have businesses basically cut into their profit margin by 16 or 17 bucks to spend for a 64 gigabyte cartridge every first party release. And also, to keep that in mind, Sonic Racing Crossworlds is going to be a $70 release. Like, I don't think we're getting this stuff for like $50, $40 games, you know, that are smaller in scope. But I do think that we might see the needle move a little bit in the right direction of the content being on the cartridge, if, like I said, the sales are not there for game key cards. And, you know, I'm not going to skip up on those games altogether, but I've already decided that if the game key cards, for me personally, I'm picking up those games digitally in most cases, unless I really just want the box art, you know, and a physical box to have for my collection because of a game that it's something I really care about. Elden Ring, you know, I'll have to toss the coin on that, because that one is one that I would like to have the box for the Switch 2, and it's probably going to be a game key card, so we'll have to, you know, kind of see what ultimately happens with that. But here's hoping that as the generation goes on, it actually becomes more on cartridge releases from third parties, because Nintendo, we already know they're going full on cartridge for all of their first party content, but the third party is the big one in question, and most of them so far have been game key cards. Maybe this is a sign of turning the tides on that, maybe not, but we'll have to wait and see for it. Okay, continuing on to our next story, we do have this following write-up over at WCCF Tech, which all stems from the Digital Foundry review and breakdown video of the Nintendo Switch 2. But I want to first highlight kind of what some of the talk is looking like online, where you can see Nintendo Switch 2 display is problematic in a number of ways and worse than its predecessor in terms of motion quality. So you have here, the Nintendo Switch 2 display is problematic in a number of ways, and it's even worse than the predecessors in certain scenarios, according to a new in-depth analysis. Around 2 weeks after the system's launch in most of the world, the tech experts at Digital Foundry shared a 2-hour-long review of the Nintendo Switch 2, going over every aspect of the system in great detail. Being the first Nintendo system to offer features that have become widely adopted in handheld devices since the launch of the original Switch, great attention has been reserved for the system's display, and the verdict is not good, as the display proved to be problematic in a number of ways. As already highlighted earlier this month, HDR support is extremely disappointing, as an edge-lit LCD that barely tops out at 420 will never deliver anything like a decent high dynamic range. Motion quality is possibly even more disappointing, as its blurring characteristics easily make the new system's panel worse than the original Switch's display. The difference in quality becomes even more evident when comparing the Nintendo Switch 2's display with the Switch OLED's panel. Now, here's kind of one of the things you have to keep in mind for that, because one, this is Digital Foundry's opinion on what they know right now based off their own impressions of the hardware and some of the tests that they have run. And the long and short of it is they believe that the Switch 2's LCD panel is more prone to ghosting whenever you are looking at like a fast in motion object. The example given by John Linneman in a lot of cases was something like a Sonic game would be problematic, a 2D side-scrolling, action platformer where you're actually tracking something going from left to right that you could potentially see ghosting because of the display technology and the LCD and the overall response time of that LCD display. They're even calling it worse than the Switch 1. Not in overall visual quality, but specifically with that motion blur and it being susceptible to that. Now, clearly it is LCD and not OLED, and hence the colors you can, I think, make a strong argument for are not going to be quite as contrasted as what you get on an OLED tech, just period. And I do think that the Switch 2 display, to me, honestly, while the colors can be slightly downgraded from the OLED, I would think you could say, I actually feel like it's a better display in every other way, shape, and form. And I personally have not seen any kind of ghosting in games that I have played in handheld. Granted, I've probably spent 60 to 70% of my time with the hardware so far in docked mode. When I have played it in handheld, nothing's popped out to me like, oh, this is a bad experience or a bad display. So kind of watch out for headlines out there. Make your own decisions on what you think of the display quality. Clearly, now that the Switch 2 console is out, before you go buy one, you can definitely go get your own hands on one in a store environment and actually kind of do a demo review yourself to see if it's a deal breaker for you. I think that this display is an upgrade in every way, shape, and form, minus it not having OLED technology. But brightness wise and overall quality wise, HDR, maybe not the highest standard there. And for me, it's still just the colors pop. They look good. They look enjoyable. Like, I'm not getting taken out of a game experience from playing a Nintendo Switch 2 in handheld mode, but nonetheless, lots of talk popping up online around Digital Foundry's takeaway with this LCD tech that Nintendo's using. And wouldn't you know it, you could probably expect at some point in this generation, we will have a refresh of this model, potentially even a OLED model once again. So if you want to wait for something like that, it might be 3-4 years down the line, but you will probably have that opportunity. But if not, not necessarily the end game breaker for the Switch 2 like some people are reporting online, in my personal opinion. But listen, if you're real sensitive to noticing things like ghosting in games, you might test out a handful of ones that are important to you in handheld play if you are on the fence for buying this console or not. Okay, from there we have a quick update around Metroid Prime 4 and the confusion about the basically a big banner that was posted up in a London subway system that actually showed the game is out now, and VGC has the updated write-up where it says Nintendo has fixed its London Underground ad, which claimed Metroid Prime 4 was out now. Nintendo had previously confirmed to VGC that the ad was incorrect. And you can see the actual image they're showing here was the one that had the Out Now logo on there. And it's now been corrected. Somebody went back and changed it out for a updated version of it, and it says 2025. So the big speculation that this was the big thing that was going to reveal a June Nintendo Direct, and it was probably going to shadow drop there, and this might be a big leak. Not the case, and not really what I thought either. I mean, it's pretty clear the advertising company that went out there in that particular market just messed up and did a misprint on Nintendo's own official posters, and the Out Now text was like exactly what was on the Mario Kart World one, which probably just means it was copy pasted wrong. Like, it was supposed to say 2025, but it was Out Now. That said, I do think that we need a Nintendo Direct presentation very soon, and we need to learn about the date for Metroid Prime 4 very soon, which will dovetail us right into our next story. But, we're going to learn about this stuff soon enough. The Out Now, they're not going to shadow drop a game like Metroid Prime 4. It has literally been in development for so many years. This will get a full media marketing push from Nintendo in the lead up to its launch. And it's really one of those big single player adventures that I think a lot of Switch 2 owners that are early adopters are looking forward to as well. And it's potentially Metroid's big breakout game from a sales perspective to potentially go higher than it's ever gone before which record sits in the 3 million units. I think 5 million plus is probably an easy guarantee for Prime 4, but we have to wait and see what happens. And could it break the 10 million mark? I don't know. For Metroid, it's definitely always been a more niche franchise, but depending on how the review scores land and what Nintendo does from a marketing and sales push for this game, you can never say never, because we've seen, The Legend of Zelda go from like a 5-10 million seller to 20 and 30 in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So franchises can definitely elevate to new heights as future releases come out. And then the last thing that you can see the internet kind of freaking out on high alert, high watch right now for some kind of summertime Nintendo Direct presentation. You can see over at Nintendo Soup where they have Nintendo of America's unpinned tweet leads to direct speculation. Japanese users have noticed that Nintendo of America had unpinned their Nintendo Switch 2 tweet on their official Twitter/X account in the last few days. This has led to speculation that a Nintendo Direct is on the way, considering that June has traditionally been a month for a full Nintendo Direct in the last several years. However, upon checking other regional Nintendo accounts on Twitter/X, it seems that Nintendo of America may have just forgotten to pin up their tweet for Donkey Kong Bonanza, as the Japanese and European accounts have pinned up posts promoting that game. So the idea there being is that traditionally Nintendo will pin their Nintendo Direct announcement tweet, and if they have nothing pinned, maybe there's a chance that that tweet is incoming, and that's why they unpinned any kind of message from their account. Or this is just Nintendo of America not basically mirroring exactly what the other regions of the world are doing. I don't think this is any kind of indication of the upcoming Direct, but I do think we're getting one. Whether or not you believe the beat-em-ups rumor that's out there right now that suggests that we're getting one in July with a handful of specific games that should be in the showcase. Made a whole separate video on that if you haven't checked it out, but it doesn't have to be tied to that. It's just from a timing and logic perspective. At the bare minimum, I think we get a partner showcase, but I really think that we're getting a full-scale Direct because Nintendo has a lot of dates to put on games that they've already advertised mysteriously. A bunch of third-party games that are coming out for other consoles are just missing the Switch 2 conversation altogether, and even some missing release dates out there for Borderlands 4, Elden Ring, Metroid Prime 4, Dragon Drive, which is supposed to be a summer 2025 game we don't have the release date for. You get the idea. Nintendo has a lot of updating to do, and I do think that a traditional Nintendo Direct presentation will be happening at some point, likely in the month of July. Now it's looking like I do not believe we're waiting till September to get these kind of updates in any kind of official Direct presentation. But let me know in the comments down below what you make of all the different stories we talked about today. How are you feeling about game key cards versus physical on cartridge experiences in this Switch 2 generation? And is it basically swaying your decision one way or another in how you pick up games right now? The Nintendo Switch 2 display problem, is it a problem for you? Do you enjoy the display? Do you notice the motion ghosting type of effect that Digital Foundry is outlining in their video? Or is it something that's a non-issue for you? When do you think we will see the official launch date revealed for Metroid Prime 4? And do you think that a Nintendo Direct presentation is potentially around the corner for the month of July? Or do you think we're left waiting longer without any kind of official communication from Nintendo? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.